My guest today is Deanna Nash. Deanna Nash Events, and also the host of the Leap Lifestyle podcast. We have a great conversation about ceremonies and vows and just general wedding stuff. My name is Brian Franklin. I am the co-founder of Vows Speeches, where we help people write and practice personalized custom vows, wedding speeches, ceremony scripts, and all of the speaking parts for any kind of event. If you or someone you know needs help with one of these things, please reach out to vowsandspeeches.com. That's VOWSAND speeches.com, or you can email me directly at Brian, BRIAN, at vowsandspeeches.com. My guest today on the Vows and Speeches podcast is Deanna Nash. Deanna Nash is the founder and the head of Deanna Nash Events here in LA, and also the host of the Leap Lifestyle podcast, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Deanna, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for your time. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm so good. I'm excited to be here with you. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you again. I was very pleased to be on your podcast talking about vows and business, and you should definitely check out her podcast. It's a lot of resources for couples that are engaged and probably people in the wedding party as well that might have some questions about what's going on.
Absolutely.
But Deanna, how long have you been a wedding planner, and how did you wind up getting started?
Well, I've been in the wedding industry for 22 years, I think it is. I got in by just saying I plan weddings. I actually worked at UCLA and I was a director of an events department there. And I sort of went to UCLA thinking I was going to spend a couple of years there, really learn how to plan events because I had no previous event experience. I was in a completely different industry before. And I ended up staying at UCLA for 13 years because I did love it. But I also wanted to plan weddings. So a few years in, I just started saying I plan weddings too, because there was a lot of crossover in terms of planning events. So I just started saying I plan weddings, and a few industry friends that knew that I was interested connected me with a florist. One connected me with another planner, so I got to assist some people to see how a wedding really ran. And my first couple of clients were actually colleagues at UCLA, and it just went from there. And here I
Wow,
am,
here you are.
22 years later.
So in 22 years, you've seen your share of good speeches, good vows and ceremonies, good moments,
Yes,
beautiful moments. I'm sure that you had a major
yes,
hand in constructing, but
thank you.
you've also seen some bad ones, I'm sure. And I think part of the point of this podcast is to shine some light on what people need to do. But I think the fun part are the bad stories. That's where all the really colorful things are. I love it when it goes right, and we talked about it on your podcast. When it goes right, it's so beautiful. And we'll talk about the elements of that and what needs to happen for it to be a peak wedding. But what were some of the examples of things that you've seen that just absolutely stunned you?
One that I sort of saw coming because I knew who was going to give a speech, and I knew that this person had been consuming quite a bit of adult beverages during the course of the cocktail hour and the reception. And when he got up to speak, he was the best man. He clearly had no roadmap. He had no idea what he was going to say. He just started speaking. And it sort of started going on and on. And I was staring at the groom because I thought, I'll back up and say he was telling skeleton closet. What's the term?
Skeletons in the closet?
Skeleton. Yes, he was telling skeleton
Like
in the
what?
closet stories. Like, oh, he was engaged before, or that girl he dated, I thought they'd stay together forever. It was just
Oh my God.
not wedding talk.
Yeah.
You know what? Those things are real life, and those things are things that may be a part of your history, but it's not a time and a place to talk about it at a wedding, especially if they're marrying someone else.
Yeah.
So he was just off. he was way off of where he should have been. And so I'm staring at the groom thinking, look at me and let me know if you want me to stop this. And he very casually looked over at me and gave me the finger across his throat, like,
Mm-hmm.
end it. And I was like, okay. But I had never
Like stopped
intervened
a,
in a toast.
yeah.
No, no. And I
It's
thought,
a pretty
okay, what am I
dramatic
going to
thing
do?
to have to do, right? I mean, somebody's
It
up there,
is.
everybody's talking. To some extent, it's their moment, right?
Yes.
So, okay, so go on.
Yes. So I walked over to the DJ it was the first time I'd ever worked with him. He was lovely. And I walked over and let me say, vendors in the room are there to support the bride and groom and everyone else is there. But we know when it's going great. We also know when it's going sideways. He and I both had looked at each other like, oh my gosh, when is this going to end? And so I just very casually walked over him. I didn't like rush, like, we're going to make this end right now. I said, we need to take the mic away from him. And he said, okay. So he very casually, just like it was normal, walked over to the man who was in the middle of talking, put his hand on the microphone and took it away and said, okay, thank you, so and so.
Wow. Yeah.
And the guy was so inebriated,
Yeah.
though, that he was like, I'm done.
I don't.
he
Yeah. I don't
he was
understand,
surprised, but not.
and maybe you can enlighten me. I don't understand why it isn't like a thing automatically where you have the Oscars music, right? You play them off, right? You just make it louder and
Yes,
louder, which is a
yes,
signal to. I mean, they know the signal. We've all seen the award shows. Like, why doesn't
yes.
every wedding and every wedding planner have that agreement with the DJ that at some point I'm going to give you a signal, and that's going to be that suddenly the
Yeah.
Oscars music starts to come up.
I think there's a couple of reasons. One, we have that conversation, but it's not our control really to stop a toast because oftentimes if I feel like it's going sideways or if I know it's going way too long, because the couple who are getting married that day, 9 times out of 10, they're in listening to this thing.
Hmm.
They have no clue about what's going on behind them. Myself and the rest of the pro team who are there that day, we can see that people are starting to pick up their phones or starting to talk and the
Yeah.
den gets
Right.
louder.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, couples never hear that. And when I tell them that later, they had no clue that that was
They're
happening
just in
because
the
they're in
zone.
it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like our job is to up front rather than in the moment up front say, hey, we need to set some guardrails
Hmm.
around
Yes.
your toasts. We need to give some time limits. We need to talk about, is there someone you don't want to like get up and grab the microphone, because we never do unplanned toast. Hear me on this, we never do
Never,
unplanned
yeah,
toast.
ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
no open mics. Okay, this is just
No.
not a thing that you want. You never want to leave it up to chance. It never
Nope.
goes well, ever.
Ever. It never goes well from two perspectives. One, from the perspective of this person probably has nothing planned to say, and that means they're just going to wing it. And toasts are not great when they are winged, in my opinion.
They're not.
Secondly,
Period.
and secondly, there there are very few wedding venues where you have carte blanche in terms of how much time you can be there. So part of what I'm doing, and again, the other wedding pros that are there that day, we are protecting your time in that space. And if someone unplanned comes and gets that mic and we don't know who it is, it could be your favorite uncle. We don't know that necessarily.
Yeah,
And if they go off the rails and speak for half an hour, there is nothing I can do unless you give me that permission.
sure. I think it's best to say to them in the planning process, look, at some point this thing gets too long for your own timeline. Like, you might be in the
Yeah.
moment. You might not be seeing what I'm seeing or know that the food's stacking up right now because you're just in the moment. So do I have permission after a
Hmm.
certain point, right? To play anybody off, including your father. Like
Yeah.
and we let, and I think it's also part of the couple's communication to their own wedding party speakers where you say, look, I'm giving you 3 to 4 minutes to do this, right?
Hmm.
I understand sometimes you don't really know what 3 or 4 minutes is, or it goes a little bit long, oh, well, no one's going to play you off, right?
Right.
But if it starts getting to be 6 minutes or 7 minutes, you're going to get played off and you're going to get cut short. Practice it, time it so that you don't do that, right?
Yes.
And just know
Yeah.
the reasons that we're doing this is to make sure that we have a sufficient amount of dancing time and time for other things before the venue says, okay, it's midnight, we're done.
You're done.
You know?
Yeah, you're done. Because that extra time comes with a big price tag typically, not
Yes.
only for the venue, for everyone who has to stay overtime. Another reason I think that it is something that really needs to be discussed prior to the wedding day is I'm not about hurting anyone's feelings on a wedding day if I can help it. I don't go in thinking, haha, who can I be mean to today? And we, as the what your wedding pros, don't necessarily know the family dynamics and don't know who is going to be really offended if we play them off. So, much like you plan every other aspect of your day, your speeches, vows, toasts should all be planned out in
Mm-hmm.
terms of who it will be, what they will say. It's okay to give some guidelines to, let's say, your if
Yeah.
you're a best man and maid of honor. It's okay to give them some guidelines. It's more than okay to give them a time limit because that is the biggest
Yeah.
that's the biggest offense, if you will, that I see is the timing just goes completely off the rails and they have no idea the flow of the day.
Right.
And they don't need to. I know that.
And
But
yeah, and they don't really know how long they're, most of the time when they come in and they do this, they don't realize how long it is. They come in with
mhm.
7 pages of material and think, oh, it's 7 minutes, right? And it's really more like 22. And by the way, for anyone listening, I have on the vowsandspeeches.com website, there's 10 tips to do a great wedding speech, which of course we want you to hire
Mm.
us, but there's some guidelines there. Things like don't say for those that don't know me,
Oh my
right? That's
gosh.
number 10,
If
by the
I
way.
had if I had a dollar, if I
You're
had $1 for every time
yes.
I have heard that in the last 22 years, I would be very rich.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
don't know what it is about the like wedding speeches that inspires that line, but I guess they've seen it so many times on TV and whatnot. But you're being introduced, right?
there's
like
a wedding.
there's a DJ going,
Yes.
and now we're going to do the best man. It's Brian.
Yes.
Welcome, Brian, to the best man. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Brian. I'm the best man. Okay,
Yeah,
you just lost 10 seconds too. And so
totally.
but I think you hit on something really important, which is that if you have somebody that has the potential of saying something that doesn't always exhibit the best judgment about what to say in front of others,
Right.
and there are things that you know they might bring up, then it behooves you to talk to your person, whoever that is, whether it's your father or your best man or who your maid of honor, and just say, look, I'm not going to read your speech because I want to be surprised that day, right? I want to
Hmm.
hear
Hmm.
you that day say these things for the first time to me, right?
Hmm.
But I would like you to not say a few things. I know, don't get into my
Exactly.
exes, don't get into my past, don't get into my
Yeah.
prior doing rails off a bathroom counter. Like, don't say that stuff, right?
Exactly.
Back in the day when we killed that prostitute, don't say it, right? And
Exactly.
and so a- a- and if you say those things to your friend or family member that's doing it, then they can't feel surprised at the end of the thing where they're like, wait, I thought this was fair game. I thought we were supposed to
Right.
have fun here. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
somebody's
Yeah.
crying. So,
Yeah.
so talk to your people about what you don't want them to say. Don't wing it, of course. I mean, and that's, boy, I can't tell you how many times people say, and even clients, they want to boil it down to bullets sometimes. And I'm like, no, 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 because you're going to spend time thinking on stage what those bullets are, and it will create a certain level of there's certain pauses that people have when they're thinking, and I just did it right this second, right? When you're speaking extemporaneously and you don't have the thought fully formulated and the sentence fully formulated, things happen, and they happen very differently than if you've written it out word for word and you've practiced it and you've gotten some muscle memory, and then you flow right through it. There are, of course, reporters and people, the actors that can do this extemporaneously and do it perfectly with flow,
Mhm.
but they're trained public speakers. And there are people that frankly are used to doing this in a certain way that you're not. And
Right.
I'm not. And so you don't want to do it for that reason. And also, you can't really know how fast or slow you're going when you're doing it, right?
Hmm.
If you're thinking
Hmm.
about that, you're not looking at the clock.
Mm-mm.
So,
No,
so
that clock ticks faster than you think, too.
yeah. And if you're going to close with this big sentimental thing or a big joke or whatever it is that you're going to close with, you don't want to run out of time. And the only way not to do that is to make sure that you've planned it out that way. So that's
Yeah.
what I think your point about winging it was really important in bullets. A lot of people have friends or family members that they feel like, okay, they have to let them have the microphone. Perhaps sometimes you run into issues, of course, with step parents, right? Where there's
Hmm.
somebody that's been
Hmm.
designated, and now and instead of 4 speakers, now there's 6 speakers because you can't pull this thing apart. And
Yes.
And in those cases, what do you do? Like, do you tell them, okay, well, we've gone from 3 minute speeches or 4 minute speeches to 2 minute speeches, or do you just space them out across the different segments of the dinner or whatever?
Both, both. I give advice that a speech, I say 2 to 3 minutes max for any person. It's just sort of a sweet spot because you're probably really going to get 3 to 4,
Right,
maybe a little more.
right.
And that's comfortable still. As you said earlier, past that is people in the room get restless. Attention spans are not what they were pre-COVID. I don't know
And
why,
even
but
if
they're
you're
just
doing
not.
it well, there's going to be laughter. There's going to be moments
Yeah,
where you stop, right? So yeah,
yes, absolutely. So for me also, because I watch this, I'm watching this from the sidelines every wedding day. Doing more than like 3 speeches in a row is sort of deadly for the last set of
speak.
speakers, because again, it's an attention span thing. So if you need to have 6 people speak, I don't recommend it ever. But two, if you must because of dynamics or you, for whatever reason, it needs to be spread out through the night. It cannot be in one lump. I once, a few years ago, had someone who had 7 speeches in a row. 7. That was like a solid hour of your guest. If you think of it from this perspective, your guest being talked at. And it may be entertaining, but it is not interactive at all, other
Yeah,
than reactions coming from your guests. But those reactions taper off, just from my experience watching, they taper off as the number of speakers goes on, and it starts to feel less entertaining.
for
And
sure.
I
Yeah,
think, yeah, I think
it's
speeches
it's
and
also
toast
kind of
should be,
emotionally exhausting, even if all of them are good.
yes,
You have that feeling, oh my god, you like your heart's bursting and you love it,
yes.
and then by the third one you're like exhausted, right? So
You want to limit that. You want to
Yeah,
leave, you really do want to leave people wanting more,
yes,
as opposed to like deluging that deluge is a deluge. I don't know.
diluting it, yeah. what
Yeah, thank you.
what do you feel mired to a particular order of speakers as relative to their role?
A little bit, I do. I think that parents, top of the night, if, well, parents, if they're hosting, top of the night. If they're not hosting, but you still want to give them their moment, I still think top of the night. I feel like the general kind of flow of a wedding reception is grand entrance, everyone comes in very excited, maybe do a little bit of dancing right away because you've got that energy high.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need to taper off and move into dinner at some point. And the sort of a nice step down from the high energy of dancing is to have these great speeches. And so if parents are going to speak, I do like to have them sort of top to give it more of a welcome slash toast.
Mm-hmm.
And then to, for like if you have wedding party that are going to speak, I actually like to do that after dinner. I do not like to do it in between courses. It's too
Yeah,
unpredictable for the kitchen.
yeah. One of the
Um,
advantages that I market to planners really more than anything is that if I'm doing all of the speeches in a wedding, and I've done that a number of times now, that I have the ability to then go to the planner and say, look, this one is good. This one's decent. They're all
Hmm.
going to be fine because we're
Yes.
making it so that they're all decent. But this one's going to be fantastic.
Yes.
And this one's going to knock everybody's socks off because they just have the stories and they've got the personality and whatever it is, right? Let's close with that one, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the traditional order, and what you're saying makes total, all things being equal, what you're saying makes
Uh-huh.
a lot of sense. Not to mention,
Yes.
the parents are going to have older friends that are probably going to go home earlier, and so
Yeah.
you want them to have their moment in front of those people. So it makes sense to put them early for a lot of different
Yes.
reasons. But if somebody's really going to rock it, let's not put them first, right?
Yeah.
You don't, because
Yeah.
you'll scare the crap out of everybody else. You will add to the anxiety level and therefore degrade their performance,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's,
Yes.
and I
It's
love,
true.
yeah, you want a crescendo if you can. And
Yes.
you can only
Yes.
do that when you know all four speeches or whatever it's turning out to be. But
Yes.
um,
Yes. I love that. I love that. I wish I had benefit of having you on every wedding so we could
there's still time. There's still time.
strategize. I know, right?
Okay, so let's talk about ceremonies for a little bit.
Okay.
I'm on TikTok, not as much as I used to be, but I still go on, and I still see these wonderful ceremony moments that are just the most loving expressions that of their relationship that you can come up with. And then I also see sometimes the guy that says, "Well, at least I'm going to tap that ass for the rest of our lives." That that, and then stops it, right? And
Yeah.
so, and everything in between. Social media has really driven a lot of the focus on these kinds of moments. I was just wondering if,
Uh-huh.
as you think about the vows, are there any that stick out, either really good or really bad, that just pop into your head?
Hmm. I like when there's a mixture of happy tears and laughing and like you sort of take your guests on a little bit of an emotional roller coaster because I think a ceremony that's too cut and dried. And look, I'm not saying that that's not appropriate because some people that is just their lane. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want the frills, they're shy, they're not comfortable standing up there. They want to get married and they want to move on with their day.
Yeah.
That is okay. But if you're going to have vows or more than do you, yes, you're married, then take your guests on a little bit of an emotional roller coaster and I don't want to say entertain, but yes, a little bit. Like adding a lot of personal touches makes a huge difference
Mm-hmm.
to the ceremony itself feeling really memorable. Telling stories about each other, talking about your favorite banana milkshake. I'll make it
Yeah.
for you forever. I think someone famous said that, and that comes to mind. So adding in super personal touches to me is what makes it super memorable.
Yeah. I find that it's not just to make it more beautiful. You're giving the people in the audience a reason to be there, right? It's not just,
Yes.
they're not just invited. They're not just going to show up, and they're not just going to go dancing. They actually learn something about you in the process. They learn why you
Yeah.
love each other. They get all into it in a way
Yes.
that they don't if they're hearing the same thing that they've heard in every other wedding or TV wedding. If you watch
Yeah.
anything, you're going to see that same ceremony, the same vows basically.
Hmm.
And that's fine, but like you said, it's fine. But then people are basically just waiting for cocktail hour. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think this is an opportunity to educate them, to give them information. Some people are coming in, they don't know both of the couple. They know one
Hmm.
person. It's a family member or a friend from college that's invited, but they haven't really spent time with you as a couple. Even your own close friends may not know some of the details of why you guys are the way you are, or how
Yeah.
you interact, or what you're really like behind closed doors, and that sort of thing. And that's where the fun is, right? And I
Hmm.
also like when you talk about roller coasters, it's interesting because you kind of said the same thing about the reception, where you want it to ebb and flow. You want
Hmm.
dynamics. You can't sustain high energy the entire way,
You cannot.
and you certainly don't want low energy the entire way.
Yeah.
But I think having those dynamics in the ceremony itself gives people a break an emotional break. It alleviates some of the tension that comes with just talking about serious stuff, serious love, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when it's beautiful, it's just like there's a point where you just go, okay. And I come from a place like many that I'm pretty damn ADD, and I think it informs the way we do business because we're playing to that audience. We want to make sure that even the more severe ADD people in the audience aren't on their phones or fidgeting too much or that sort of thing.
Right.
We want them
Right.
wrapped,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. You want it, I think, your wedding day, like as I'm planning with a couple, oftentimes we say we want to tell your story from a satellite view
Yeah.
in terms of building out your day. And that starts with your ceremony. It starts with like invitations, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
once we're to the day, the first thing generally is the ceremony. And you want to start dripping out your story in your ceremony. And that is the place where you can say it with actual words.
Yeah.
The rest of the day, from the planning purview, is told in like the details of the day, not necessarily like saying exactly what it is, why exactly you wanted to come here today.
Yeah.
And I think that telling your story in whatever way, funny, sad, anywhere in between, is such a great, like, it's such a great launch to your wedding.
Yeah, and it
And
doesn't have to be you doing it. You could have, for those of you that are having friends or family members officiate the wedding,
mhm,
they could tell the story, and that we
yes.
certainly write plenty of those where we interview the couple and we interview the officiant that knows them, and we get all three perspectives on the relationship essentially, and I've had couples where they excuse me, I've had couples where they decided they don't want to do their own vows. They're just too afraid of public speaking, or
Mhm.
they just don't want to do it. But almost everything that was going to be in the vows wound up in the ceremony, right?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
Joe loves her because she wakes
Hmm.
up in the morning and the first thing she does is give him a kiss, and she does it every single day, no matter what. And she doesn't just get out of bed, right? And Tina loves him so much because every day he brings home flowers, whatever it might be, right? And
Hmm.
but you can tell the story of what they would love about each other and all the fun stuff and what they hate about each other, and the couple doesn't have to say a word, right?
Hmm.
But that's where it can also, again, much like the wedding speeches, it needs to be curated by either by the couple or by the person writing the ceremony, or there's somebody needs to say, okay, this is something that we shouldn't say. This is going on too
Yeah.
long. This is
Yeah.
your framework, right? You've got too much copy here. You need to pull it back. That kind of thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Have you seen
We should
bad
never be
ceremony?
winging it.
Yeah. What, like, whether you've designed them or not, what are some? Are there specific examples of ceremonies gone bad relative to content that you can remember?
I
It's
had
rare.
one once.
Yeah.
It is rare. It's rare because just like you were saying, you're telling this great story, whether it's long, short, funny, sad, whatever it is. There is such a thing as too short of a ceremony. I
Hmm.
literally had one once that was about 3 minutes. And I was standing at the back listening, and I was like, this sounds like it's wrapping up. There was no content to it. And that was not by design. I do not know what happened because the couple, I always ask, like, how long is the ceremony? Because that triggers a lot of other things to be happening post ceremony. And the plan is usually somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. And 3 minutes in, I'm like, oh no, this is wrapping right now. So for me, it's that sort of thing that you didn't even have time to draw your guests in. You drew no
Yeah.
picture of your life for them. And I think that that is like when you were just talking about, oh, Joe brings her flowers every day or she kisses him first thing every morning. You're drawing people into your lives and letting them imagine the love that you have for each other.
Yeah.
Yes, you're displaying it by standing at the altar, but there's something so personal about letting them into those little intricacies of life that really are the things that you love about each other. So not at having any of that, I think is not great. Other instances are not necessarily from the couple's perspective, but from the officiant perspective. If the officiant doesn't know them that well and is like calling them by the wrong name, or like my name
Yeah.
is weirdly spelled.
Yes.
When I got married, I was called the wrong name through my entire
Yeah.
wedding ceremony. So, I mean, it
Did,
is what it is. I expected that. But, all right, no, I didn't expect that, but I
whoa.
wasn't surprised at
Was
that,
that
let's say.
the, where did that come from? Hold
What
on.
was that?
I'm hearing music. Well, stand by.
Okay.
What is going on? That is so weird. What is that? That was bizarre. It was like all of a sudden music started coming on. Okay, well, let's reset.
Okay.
So, yeah, I in my first marriage, I in my first marriage ceremony, the officiant got to a certain point and he's like, Brian, and you, and couldn't remember her name, right? Like it just,
Okay.
and it was like this long pause as he was like trying to think of something, and then we're like, Deborah, and he's like, Deborah. Everybody laughed. It was really fun. He also went on
Yeah.
some tangent about the moon, like for like
Oh,
4 minutes. He was talking about the moon randomly, and we're like, what? Like, what? Does anybody know what he's talking about? I'm like looking around, like it was the funniest thing. But that's one issue. I think a good professional officiant will do the research. He'll make them do the questionnaire, whatever it might be. But we had Alan Katz on recently, and he was he was talking about how one of his couples put a name on the questionnaire, and then it turned out she doesn't even go by that name, but no one told him, right? So he gets up there and he's saying essentially the name that no one knows,
uh-huh.
or something like that, right? And this is many years ago, so now he's like, but you learn as a professional officiant, you should be learning to do those things and to make sure that,
Yeah.
okay, is this the name that you go by? And yeah, I'm sure he asks that now
Right.
25
It's
years
part
in.
of it.
He's a total pro, but
Yeah.
but you also have officiants out there that are literally there just to be the officiant and not. They
Yes.
have the same standard script every single time they ever do a wedding. It's the exact same
Yeah.
thing, and it may not correlate to the couple at all, right?
Hmm.
On the flip
Hmm.
side, you've got the friends and family officiants that have never done anything
Yes.
like this, may not know the legal requirements that have to be in a
Hmm.
wedding, because in most states you actually have to say I do or yes or
Uh-huh.
some level of verbal affirmation, right? You know,
Yes.
there are
You have to agree.
signatures sometimes that have to happen. There are things
Yes.
that have to happen. But not just that,
Yes.
it's also the flow of a ceremony. What happens in what order? When does it go from here to here? And where to hold the microphone, right?
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
I when we talk to ceremony officiants, it's like, okay, are you going to be at a podium? Are you going to be holding a book? If you're holding a book, then are you holding a microphone as well, or is there going to be a lapel microphone? And if there's not going to be a lapel microphone and they're holding it, then you better practice turning the page, right? And make sure
Yeah.
that your line breaks don't happen in the middle of a paragraph, so that you're like,
Right.
and then they met on the street, and then John pulled the door, turn the page, open, and it's like, so you get stuff like that you have to think about
Yeah.
as you're doing
Yes.
this, right? Just for
Hmm.
the flow, just to make it look like you're actually telling a story and that
Yeah.
you've spoken it once before, right?
Yes. Yes. And again, winging it, never advised, especially for a family and friends.
Yes.
I have seen bullet points and it just sort of makes for a rambling. You get there because
Yeah.
typically if they're not working with someone like you, they're going to ask me, what do I have to say? And I'm going to say, you have to say these few things to make it legal.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can say whatever. But I feel like family and friends are the most personal ceremonies and can be amazing or can be really, really uncomfortable. I would say for the most part, most couples choose someone who they know can stand in front of a crowd and say the things that need to be said with some level of authority, being
Yeah.
entertaining. Most couples choose someone who can do that. So that's fortunate. But
Yeah.
a lot of times they they really have to prepare, I think, more than maybe a professional
Oh, it's
officiant
oh,
because
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And not only does it require the preparation in terms of rehearsal and write, but it takes a long time to write. You're
Hmm.
talking about 8 to 10 minutes of copy. So depending on what your font size is, but like at 11-point font, you're looking at 3 or 4 pages easily,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
it's not just 3 or 4 pages; it's 3 or 4 pages of good stuff that tells a story.
Hmm.
And I think one of the challenges for the officiant is time, right? Can you hold on one second? I'm getting
Yeah.
that music again. Oh, that's so weird. It's like my Bluetooth
Alexa,
thing.
she's
Okay.
Alexa's like, let's talk, let's sing.
So, I think the biggest challenge that people have is time, right? They don't necessarily, they think they're going to do it in advance, but often people get busy and they'll just, okay, I'll do it next week. I'll do it next week. And next
Yes.
thing they're rushing and they're going on to Google and they're getting your template. But the couple's expectation is that they're spending lots of time on this, that they're actually going to
Yes.
do their homework and make sure that it is beautiful. And I talk to people all the time where they just slapped it together at the last minute, and then the couple's up there, and it's just not what they expected it to be,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Yes.
again, going to communicate, the job of the couple, and I think in these instances is you got to communicate what you want it to be, what you want it to feel like. Do you want it to be funny, right? Do you want it to be really funny and a laugh a minute kind
Yeah.
of thing, or do you want it to have a couple of laughs, but you really want it like super serious for the most part?
Hmm.
And I don't think it should be super serious a lot, like the whole way, but of course,
Right.
but I lend itself. My tendency is to not go all humor or go all serious. I think it should be between a 4 and a 6, somewhere in
Yes,
there, right?
agreed. 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 And I also think like whether you're working with a professional or you are having a friend do your ceremony, I don't think that a wedding ceremony is where you want to be surprised.
Right.
You probably want to have a little bit more of a hand in crafting what's going to be said. And that doesn't mean that you have to write it for and hand it off to, because I think also that would fall flat. If I'm your friend and you're handing me what to read, I've not imbued any of
Yeah.
my personality or my stories or my thoughts into it.
Or your
But
voice, right? Or your voice, right?
exactly, exactly. But to also the element of surprise on your wedding day is there. That's usually not the day you want some
Well, I'm only going to
surprises.
disagree with you to this extent.
Okay.
I think that if a professional is involved, then
Hmm.
you can trust them,
Yes.
and in those instances you kind of want to be surprised because that's when you get the authentic reactions and the real
Okay.
laughter. I've had a couple of clients that have insisted on seeing the ceremony copy beforehand,
Oh, uh-huh.
but
Uh-huh.
for the most part, I encourage them not to.
Oh,
I'm like,
okay.
tell me the elements you want in it. If there's a reading, if Aunt June is doing a reading, and these are the readings, and I give them an outline of the order that everything would be. And one thing I do push to them is the actual language of the ring exchange and the I do's, right? I mean,
Okay,
that's those,
yeah.
because those can
Yeah.
be customized, and we want to make sure everybody's comfortable with what we're saying. But as far as the narrative goes, I ask them to tell me anything that they don't want in it. Like if they're telling me a story, just if this is on background or confidential, tell me, right? But
Uh-huh.
otherwise,
Uh-huh.
in the interview process, we're getting stuff that we're going to make a story out of. And I'd rather you'd hear, because I'm going to interview you separately, I'd rather
Hmm.
you hear for the first time that no, John thinks he's the better driver, right?
For
Or
sure.
like,
Yeah.
or he kind of enjoys terrifying you when he drives, or whatever it is. And
Yes, that's
and
true.
I want the photographer to get that what like
Yeah.
that, like that laughter that comes out, or hear, excuse me, or hear that sentimentality that comes, that was when the guy's breaking up a bit after listening like when the ceremony officiant saying something that's really truly emotional, and they're like, oh, like, and I want them to hear
Yeah,
that for the first time.
that's true.
But I think you can only do that, and you should only do that when you're putting it in the hands of a professional, or the person that's writing it,
100%.
or the person that's writing it is 100% professional. And
Agreed.
and then you can trust them. But otherwise, make sure you know what's happening.
Yeah, and it's from a standpoint also, I think if I'm the person that's asked to write a ceremony or to give to be the officiant for a ceremony. I've never done that, by the way. But if I were, I would want some input from the couple so that I know which direction to go.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want the pressure of coming up with it from total no input at all from them.
right. Yeah. I ask them like I ask them the humor question. I ask them about tone. I ask them about religion. Right? Do you want
Mhm.
references to God? Do you want? Some people will say right away like this is what we want, and they'll tell you, and
Yeah,
that will be included. But that can get tricky too because if you have an uncle, for example, who's a pastor, and you run into those situations where sometimes the person comes in and starts talking about religion in a way that it doesn't represent you as a couple, right?
correct.
And
Yes.
so if you don't want that, then that should be clear to your officiant. And if you do want that, that should be clear to your officiant. And
Mhm.
so I think that's an aspect of that's one question I ask, and I think speed and timing, of course, is the other one. Do you want this thing to be a very fast wedding, or do you want it to be something that's got a little color to it? And I don't think it's not either or. It's a gray area somewhere in the middle where it's not going to be super long ever, and it's not going to be super short ever, right?
And it's just too short.
Yeah. 3 minutes is definitely too short. No question.
Yeah,
I mean, at that point, just go to the courthouse and have a party, right? You save yourself a whole
exactly.
lot of trouble.
Totally.
Yeah. You
Totally.
just want the
And
photos.
yeah, and your guests have come, they've come for the whole day.
Yeah.
But the whole point of the day is actually that however many minutes your ceremony ends up being, the rest is like the celebration of that.
Yeah.
So
So do you mainly work in Southern California, or do you work all over the country or internationally? What do you do?
anywhere I've done it all. I am based in Southern California and Los Angeles, so I tend to work mostly here. I grew up in Texas, so I do some weddings there as well. I will go anywhere, north, south, east, west.
Yeah.
I've done weddings in Mexico. I've been going to Italy to familiarize myself with doing weddings there.
Yeah.
So
And you can go to
anywhere.
deannanashevents.com where you can see
Exactly.
some of the examples of your work. But would you say that you have is there something in the way that you do weddings that you feel defines you?
I think couples who come to me are probably looking for more of a classic look in terms of aesthetically. From that respect, most of my weddings tend to be sort of timeless, in my opinion. I think that's probably what aesthetically draws couples to me. In terms of how I work, I think I'm pretty easygoing and laid back. Like
Hmm.
I've had like super type A couples, but I think that they're probably not that drawn to me because I'm not type A. I don't think so.
What do you
I'm more
think?
relaxed.
What do you think couples that are looking for a wedding planner should really look for? Besides, obviously, you're attracted to the design aesthetics, you like the pictures that looks you perhaps you like the personality, but what else should couples consider when they're hiring a wedding planner at whatever value?
Mhm. I think a sense of trust that you can trust this person to listen to you and to be frank with you in terms of if you're saying like I want to paint this room purple, well like, there's no venue you're going to be able to go into and paint it purple, but maybe we can do lighting to make it purple.
Hmm.
So someone who is going to listen to your ideas and give you true professional feedback. Also, I feel strongly that every vendor you hire for your wedding, starting with your wedding planner, should be someone that you enjoy as a person. And of course, you don't know that from the very beginning, but we all have gut instincts and it goes both ways in terms of if I meet a couple and I'm like, no way, then I'm not going to give them a proposal
Yeah.
because I don't want to make it miserable for all of us for however many months or year that we're working together.
Yeah.
So for me, someone that you trust, you feel a sense of kinship with, that to me, I think is super important. I tell my couples when they've hired me, but now we're looking at other vendors, make it someone that you would want to be a guest at your wedding because oftentimes they're going to be there
Yeah.
and they may be front and center if they're a band or a DJ. They're going to be with you the entire day if they're the photographers. So make it someone that you would want to be at your wedding and you have that initial gut instinct like, yes, that's my
As
person.
someone that's done weddings in a range of sizes,
Hmm.
when they're getting married, they're looking at their guest list versus what you get for your money. Let's say at the same dollar figure,
Yes.
if we cut this back to 50 people, we were serving X, Y, and Z, and we're able to do this and that. What do you think, having done all of these weddings, what do you like better? I mean, obviously it's easy. So in some ways it's easier to plan when you have less people and more money for those
Hmm.
people. But
Hmm.
but you're also changing the vibe of the wedding by having fewer people.
Hmm.
What for you? What's the sweet spot in there? Like, what do you personally like?
I personally like weddings of a size that allow the couple to actually spend time with those people. If you have three, four, 500 people in a room, you're not spending very much time with that. You're either spending time with a very core group of people and a lot of people are getting no attention or everyone's getting very little if any attention. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not possible as a couple. So for me, I like to build a wedding around how like touch points from the couple to the guests and from the guests to the couple.
Yeah,
So those tend to be probably under 200 people. I've
multi-day.
done.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I like building a wedding weekend where again it's you have time
yeah.
on the day before to spend some time with your friends because I was thinking about this earlier. When we're planning a wedding, we are planning it for the guests. And yes, you're giving them an amazing time, an amazing music, amazing food, amazing drink service, but there's the guests are also giving you of their time, their travel to come to your wedding. And so I like to think of it as having the wedding be something that is meaningful to both parties. It's your wedding, 100%. But it should also be about the guest experience.
Yeah.
And for me, the weddings that I tend to do, when you're getting into the 300, the 500 person range,
Yes.
it's a little bit harder guest
Yeah, for
experience
sure.
wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember in my own wedding to my forever wife, Nicole, one thing we didn't think of, but we were luckily able to do is buy the little bungalows by the pool, the cabanas,
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
we got a couple of cabanas and that became for the weekend during the day when everybody was hanging out at the pool drink, like you made sure you had like a little center there.
Yes.
And another thing that I think we didn't mention, but going back to speeches for 1 second, if you do have more speakers than you have time for during your reception, the rehearsal dinner night is often a place where you can put
Oh my gosh, yes.
questionable speakers, more nervous speakers, right? It's not that you're relegated to that, but it can be a place where you put it. It's a smaller group. It's a little bit more
Yeah.
trusting group in some cases, and gives you a little bit more flexibility. So in some ways, but again, you still have the same framework. So you want it to be short and all that. So
You do. And that's if you have some people just have a ton of friends, and that's amazing. And a ton of friends that they want to include in their wedding, or those friends want to be included in the wedding. And that's incredible. It's not necessarily possible, though, to have them all speak on the wedding day because we have time limitations. It's just the reality of weddings. So having some of those people that are special to you speaking at the rehearsal
yeah,
slash welcome is also honoring them because you're still including them in this most special weekend of your life. So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with having. And sometimes I feel like the pressure may be a little less at the rehearsal.
For sure,
So
for sure. It's
to
just
your
smaller
point,
groups, and they're usually groups that you've
yeah,
already met. I mean, you're not speaking in front of strangers. You're not speaking in front of somebody's bosses. The rules are a little different in that sense. But Deanna, Deannanash events.com. So go there, go to the Leap Lifestyle Podcast. Just look it up, Deanna Nash Events, and you will find her. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. And I really appreciate your insights. It was a lot of fun, as always, to see you.
thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. This was really fun. Thanks for having me.
If you need help with your vows, your wedding speech, or your ceremony script, you want to make it personal, you need some help practicing it, visit vowsandspeeches.com. That's VOWSAND speeches.com. You can reach out to me there. You can send me an email at Brian, BRIAN, at vowsandspeeches.com. But I would love to help you.